Thank you for staying tuned to Urban TV, and my name is EdmonSafali. And in the special way, I'm here speaking to Dr. Gladys Kalema about her job as a first wildlife vet. Now, Dr. Gladys, I want to understand, you're working with wildlife for all your life. What does your husband feel about your career?
My husband really supports my career. Actually, he likes nature, and when we met before we got married, I told him I wanted to start an NGO. I had finished working at the Uganda Wildlife Authority for 4 years as their first wildlife veterinary doctor, and I said to him, when I go back to Uganda, I don't want to continue working with UWA. I want to set up an NGO which does both wildlife vet work and community conservation. Because in my time at UWA, I realized that there were a lot of issues between the community and the park. And there's a way that we could address them through improving the community's health care. And I thought we wanted to set up an NGO that looks at that as well. And so he was the first donor to the NGO with $100. And this was a lot of money for a student, who's also in America, struggling to survive. So with that, we opened up a bank account in America, and we were able then to register as a US registered non-profit or NGO, and then came back to Uganda and registered as a Ugandan NGO, Conservation Through Public Health. So
am I right to assume that both your love for wildlife ignited your relationship?
I think our relationship was there before,
to
but it strengthened it, yes. For sure. Yes, it strengthened it.
Together with your husband, you start your organization, Conservation Through Public Health.
Yes.
That seeks to ensure that people, livestock and wildlife coexist.
Yes.
What does that interface entail, and why is it important to manage these three components?
We set up Conservation Through Public Health primarily because we had a skin disease, scabies, in the gorillas. Another name is Obuhere in Richiga, Obuhere in Uganda, which was traced to people living around the national park who have very little health care. And the gorillas got it most likely when they went into people's gardens to eat their banana plants. The problem with gorillas is they're not only interested in the fruit, they like to destroy the whole stem to look for water. So people in the community are very upset. The gorilla destroys their livelihood. And they put out scarecrows to chase away wildlife, gorillas, baboons, and other wildlife. And they put out normally dirty clothing. And so when gorillas touch this dirty clothing, because they're curious like us, especially baby gorillas, they're curious like human infants, and then it's probably spread through the group. Because when people go to track gorillas, you're not allowed to touch them. You have to be at least 5 meters away from them, and 5 to 7 meters. And so that's most likely how they got the scabies. And anyway, a baby gorilla died, and the rest of them only recovered with treatment. And that's when, around that time, we held health education workshops with the community to find out what they thought about all these issues, and to tell them that they need to be healthy to protect the gorillas, because they're bringing a lot of income for them and getting them out of poverty through tourism. We found out that many of them were willing to listen to what we had to say, and they gave very good suggestions on how to improve the situation. And many of their suggestions are what we used to start the NGO. And so in Bwindi, the main issue was the people were not against the gorillas, but they didn't like the gorillas destroying their crops. And also, people were making gorillas sick. And they didn't want to make gorillas sick. And they wanted to improve on their health so that the gorillas don't get sick. And also because they also want to get healthy themselves. The health services are very limited the farther away you go from Kampala. As you go further away, by the time you get to the national park, the health services are very limited. So our NGO came in to strengthen the health services of the people, while at the same time we're improving the health of the wildlife and their livestock. Now in parks like Queen Elizabeth National Park, there's a lot of conflict between the cattle keepers and the national park. People want to graze their cattle in the park, the Basongora for example, because that was where they used to graze it before. But at the same time, the wildlife and the livestock can make each other sick. Brucellosis, tuberculosis can go from the wildlife to the people to the community, or in between the wildlife and the people. Disease can go either from wildlife to livestock, or livestock to wildlife. And they have a lot of resentment towards the park because they can't graze. And so with our approach of improving the health of the wildlife and the livestock, which they care about, we've made them start to like the wildlife much more, and the Wildlife Authority. And so in that situation, our approach reduced that conflict by, they like the Wildlife Authority now, that they're able to, we've had 2 instances of them rescuing animals, baby elephants, which are now at Uganda Wildlife Education Center.
So these mountain gorillas are so endangered, yet they bring in a lot of money for our economy. How do communities around the national park benefit from this, and how important is it to engage them in conservation and tourism efforts?
It's very important to engage the local community, because without them, you cannot protect the wildlife. For them, the wildlife is their day-to-day neighbor. And for you, you come and visit it as a tourist. Oh, lovely gorilla, beautiful elephant. But for them, it can be a source of stress. It can destroy their property. Sometimes there's, people die because these are big animals. They don't mean to kill people, but sometimes it happens. Like hippos and buffalo, elephants. So if you don't want these community members to kill the animals when they go into their gardens, you have to gain their support for wildlife. And one very good way to do it is to reduce poverty. Many of these people are very poor, but the moment you engage them in tourism, which is a revenue earner, they can become champions of wildlife, and instead of poaching the wildlife, they start protecting it. And so tourism is one very good way of getting communities to support wildlife. And also other ways, other benefits that organizations bring. So on top of tourism, which is controlled by the Uganda Wildlife Authority, there's also the issue of better health services. Other NGOs are improving their livelihoods in other ways. And so you have to gain the support of the community. Without them, conservation of wildlife cannot continue.
These are wild animals, really. What is the level of risk involved in doing this kind of work, especially for everyone, especially you being a woman?
The level of risk is quite high because these are wild animals. And when you're out there with them, they could turn on you. And so you just have to be very careful, but we always go with rangers who know how to deal with to protect us and know how to deal with them. And we also get to study them and understand how you should behave in front of a gorilla. If it beats its chest, don't beat your chest, because you're trying to show it you're also strong. Are you ready to fight with a gorilla? No. They're 5 times as strong as man, so you wouldn't want to take that risk. And just knowing you can observe them without disrupting their normal natural behavior. So that's very important. Studying them, knowing how to be, you are next to them, and then also working with the rangers. But of course, if we have to treat them, we have to make them go to sleep, anesthetize them. And that's a different kind of protection that you need now from the park staff.
When my doctor Gladys Kalema, Zikusoka2, needs comforting, which words do you use? Do you read a book, a Bible? What words do you use?
When I need comforting, I read, for sure. The Bible is one. I read the Bible every day. But also, I read books. I like to escape and lose myself in books. And, inspirational books. I know that, Edmond, you're a motivational speaker. So books written by people like you who want to, inspiring books and inspirational books is another way that I can escape and relax. And of course, also, I like swimming and other kinds of sports, hiking, things like that. That's also very helpful.
In a second, what do you think is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
The best piece of advice I've ever received is from a lady who has been a mentor to me too. She went out to study orangutans. Orangutans is another great ape, like a mountain gorilla or a chimpanzee, but found on a different continent in Asia. She's called Birita Gaudicus. And when I went to her talks in London, when I was a vet student, she wrote, and I bought one of her books, she wrote, "Follow your dreams and the rest will follow." And so that's been words of advice I've given to anybody, especially young women. A lot of women, when they come out of school, they're worried about getting married. Will I ever get married? Will I have a husband? But actually, if you follow your dreams, you'll find the right kind of husband, the right kind of partner. So I think that's really helped me a lot, and I think it can help other young ladies.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gladys.
Thank you very much, Edmond.
Sometimes we want to say what other people have just mentioned to us, and what Dr. Gladys has just told us is just enough for you to take for this whole week. Until we meet next week, your coach, Edmond Safali.